So my dad has always been one of those people who finds a way to downplay everything I accomplish. When I got my college degree, he said it was just a piece of paper. When I landed my first job, he said anyone could get hired these days. But last month something happened that really got to me. I had just received a promotion at work with a $5,000 raise, and I was honestly pretty excited about it. I mean, it felt like real validation that I was doing something right. So I decided to share the news with my family over dinner. Big mistake. My dad immediately started going on about how promotions these days don't mean anything and companies just hand them out to keep people happy. He basically made it sound like I hadn't earned it at all. I left that dinner feeling completely deflated, but then something interesting happened at work that changed everything. So I'm Jason, 26, junior manager at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. I've been working there for about 3 years now, starting right out of college in an entry-level position. The company does digital marketing campaigns for various clients, and I work in the account management department. It's not the most glamorous job, but I actually enjoy it most days. My relationship with my dad has always been complicated. He's this old-school guy who worked in manufacturing his whole life, and I think he sees my office job as somehow less legitimate than what he did. He's got this way of making me feel like nothing I do is ever good enough, which honestly has been going on since I was a kid. My mom tries to balance it out, but she usually just stays quiet when he gets going. The promotion I got was to senior account coordinator, which comes with more responsibilities and better pay. I'd been working toward it for months, taking on extra projects and staying late to make sure everything was perfect. When my manager told me I got it, I felt like I was finally making real progress in my career. The $5,000 raise wasn't huge, but it felt significant to me. I thought my family would be proud, especially since I'm the first person in my family to work in an office environment. I should have known better than to expect my dad to react positively, but I guess I was hoping this time would be different. The dinner was at my parents' house on a Sunday evening, which is pretty much a weekly tradition in our family. My mom had made her usual roast chicken with all the sides, and the whole house smelled amazing when I walked in. My younger sister Emma was there too, along with her boyfriend Mike. Everyone was in a good mood, talking and laughing while we got everything ready. I waited until we were all sitting down and had started eating before I brought up my news. I remember feeling nervous about it, which is ridiculous when you think about it. I mean, this was supposed to be good news, right? But something about my dad's presence always makes me second-guess myself. I told them about the promotion and tried to sound casual about it, like it wasn't a big deal. I mentioned the new title and the additional responsibilities I'd be taking on. My mom immediately got excited and started asking questions about what the new role would involve. Emma congratulated me and said she was proud of me. Even Mike, who I barely know, said it sounded like a great opportunity. But then my dad jumped in. He asked how much the raise was, and when I told him it was $5,000, he just shook his head. He said that wasn't much money in the real world, and that companies these days just throw around fancy titles to make people feel important without actually paying them what they're worth. He went on this whole rant about how back in his day, you had to really prove yourself to get promoted, and it meant something substantial. The worst part was when he said that HR departments just hand out promotions to keep people from quitting, and that it probably didn't have anything to do with my actual performance. He said I shouldn't get too excited about it because it was probably just corporate politics. I tried to explain that I had been working really hard and taking on extra projects, but he cut me off and said that's just what you're supposed to do in any job. My mom tried to change the subject, but the damage was already done. I could feel my face getting hot, and I just wanted to leave. The rest of dinner was awkward, with everyone trying to pretend like nothing had happened. I helped clean up afterward, but I was pretty quiet the whole time. When I finally left, I felt worse than I had before I came over. Instead of feeling proud of my accomplishment, I was questioning whether I had actually earned the promotion or if my dad was right about it being meaningless. The drive home was brutal. I kept replaying the conversation in my head and wondering if maybe he had a point. Maybe the promotion wasn't as big a deal as I thought it was. Maybe I was just being naive about how the corporate world works. By the time I got back to my apartment, I was feeling pretty defeated about the whole thing. The next morning at work, I couldn't shake what my dad had said. I kept looking around the office and wondering if everyone could tell that I didn't deserve the promotion. It was ridiculous, but his words had really gotten under my skin. I found myself second-guessing every decision I made and wondering if my manager had just felt sorry for me or something. Around lunchtime, I decided I needed to talk to someone about it. I thought about calling Emma. but I didn't want to drag her into family drama. Instead, I found myself walking toward the HR department. Our HR manager, Linda, had always been pretty approachable, and I figured she might be able to give me some perspective on the whole situation. Linda was in her office when I knocked on her door. She's probably in her 40s, been with the company for like 8 years, and she has this way of making you feel comfortable even when you're discussing awkward stuff. I told her I wanted to ask her something about my recent promotion, and she invited me to sit down. I explained what had happened at dinner, though I didn't go into too much detail about my dad's reaction. I just said that someone had suggested that promotions these days don't really mean much, and that they're handed out for political reasons rather than performance. I asked her if that was true, and if my promotion was actually based on merit or if it was just routine. Linda looked a little surprised by the question. She told me that our company definitely doesn't hand out promotions lightly, especially ones that come with salary increases. She said that every promotion has to be justified with performance data and that managers have to make a strong case for why someone deserves to move up. She mentioned that my manager had submitted detailed documentation about my performance over the past year. Then she said something that really stuck with me. She told me that my performance metrics had been consistently strong and that I had exceeded expectations in several key areas. She didn't go into specifics right then, but she said that if I wanted to see the actual data, she could probably arrange that. The way she said it made me realize that there was real documentation behind my promotion, not just someone's opinion. I left that conversation feeling a little better, but I was also curious about what exactly those performance metrics looked like. I mean, if there was actual data that supported my promotion, that would definitely prove my dad wrong. I decided I would ask Linda if I could see those numbers, just so I could have some concrete evidence about whether I had actually earned this or not. I went back to Linda's office the next day and asked if she could show me the performance data she had mentioned. She seemed happy that I was interested in understanding how the promotion decision was made. She told me she'd need to pull some reports together and asked if I could come back later that afternoon. When I returned, Linda had printed out several charts and documents. She spread them out on her desk and started walking me through the numbers. I have to admit, I was pretty nervous about what I might find. Part of me was worried that the data would confirm my dad's suspicions and show that I was just an average employee who got lucky. But what I saw was completely different from what I expected. Linda showed me metrics for things like client satisfaction scores, project completion rates, and revenue generation for the accounts I managed. She had data going back over the past year, and it was all organized in these neat charts that made it easy to understand. The numbers were actually really impressive. My client satisfaction scores were about 30% higher than the department average. The projects I managed came in on time and under budget more consistently than most other coordinators. And the accounts I worked on had generated more revenue growth than the typical portfolio in our department. Linda pointed out specific examples of times when I had gone above and beyond what was expected. There was documentation of the extra training sessions I had organized for junior staff members, the process improvements I had suggested that saved the company money, and the client relationships I had built that led to contract renewals. She also showed me feedback from clients that had been submitted as part of my performance review. I had no idea that our clients were regularly asked to evaluate their account coordinators, but apparently they were. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, with several clients specifically mentioning my attention to detail and communication skills. The most surprising thing was a comparison chart that showed how my performance stacked up against other people in similar roles. I wasn't just meeting expectations. I was significantly exceeding them in almost every category. Linda explained that promotions are only approved when someone demonstrates sustained high performance over an extended period. Looking at all this data, I felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was relieved and proud to see concrete evidence that I had earned my promotion. On the other hand, I was frustrated that my dad's comments had made me doubt myself so much. I thanked Linda for taking the time to show me everything, and she said I should feel confident about my advancement because the numbers clearly supported it. That evening, I sat in my apartment thinking about everything Linda had shown me. The performance data was pretty convincing evidence that I had earned my promotion, but I couldn't stop thinking about my dad's reaction. It wasn't just about this one incident. It was part of a pattern that had been going on for years. I started remembering other times when he had dismissed my accomplishments. When I graduated college with honors, he said grades didn't matter in the real world. When I got my first job, he said the company probably just needed bodies and would hire anyone. When I got my first apartment, he said I was wasting money on rent instead of saving up to buy a house. It was like no matter what I did, he found a way to minimize it or suggest that I hadn't really earned it. I had always chalked it up to him being practical or trying to keep me humble, but sitting there looking at those performance charts, I realized it was something more than that. He seemed determined to make me feel like I wasn't capable of real success. I thought about calling him and telling him about the performance data, but I knew how that conversation would go. He'd probably say that numbers can be manipulated or that HR departments are just trying to justify their decisions after the fact. He'd find some way to dismiss the evidence, just like he always did. The more I thought about it, the more frustrated I became. Here I was, a grown man with a college degree and a successful career, still seeking approval from someone who seemed incapable of giving it. I realized that part of the reason I had been so affected by his comments was that deep down, I was still hoping for his validation. But looking at those performance metrics, I knew I had earned this promotion. The data didn't lie, and it wasn't based on politics or favoritism. It was based on measurable results and client feedback. I had worked hard, exceeded expectations, and delivered real value to my company. That should have been enough, regardless of what my dad thought about it. I decided that I needed to stop letting his negativity affect how I felt about my own achievements. The promotion was legitimate, the raise was deserved, and I had the documentation to prove it. Whether he acknowledged that or not was his problem, not mine. Later that week, I met up with my friend Derek for drinks. We've been friends since college, and he's always been a good person to talk to when I'm dealing with family stuff. Derek works in finance and has his own complicated relationship with his parents, so he usually understands where I'm coming from. I told him about what had happened at dinner and how it had led me to question my own promotion. Derek listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I appreciate about him. When I finished explaining the whole situation, including what I had learned from HR, he just shook his head. Derek said he couldn't believe I had let my dad get in my head like that. He reminded me that he had seen me work on projects during college and that I had always been thorough and dedicated. He said it didn't surprise him at all that I was excelling in my career and that the performance data just confirmed what he already knew about my work ethic. Then he said something that really resonated with me. He told me that some parents have a hard time accepting that their kids are successful because it forces them to confront their own limitations or regrets. He suggested that maybe my dad's reaction wasn't really about me at all, but about his own feelings of inadequacy or missed opportunities. Derek encouraged me to confront my dad about the pattern of dismissing my achievements. He said I had concrete evidence now that my promotion was legitimate and that I owed it to myself to stand up for my accomplishments. He pointed out that if I didn't address this now, it would probably just keep happening every time I had good news to share. I admitted that I was nervous about confronting my dad directly. I'd never really challenged him on this stuff before, and I wasn't sure how he would react. Derek said that was exactly why I needed to do it. He said I couldn't keep letting fear of his reaction prevent me from defending myself and my achievements. By the end of our conversation, I felt more confident about the idea of having a direct conversation with my dad. Derek offered to help me practice what I wanted to say, but I told him I thought I could handle it. I knew I had the performance data to back up my position, and I felt like it was time to stop letting his negativity go unchallenged. The plan was to wait for the right opportunity, maybe the next family dinner, and then calmly present the facts about my promotion. I wasn't looking for a fight, but I was ready to stand up for myself in a way I never had before. The opportunity came that weekend when I went over to help my dad with some yard work. It's something we do together occasionally, and it usually gives us a chance to talk without the rest of the family around. I had brought the promotion letter from my company with me, thinking it might be useful if the conversation came up naturally. We were working on cleaning up the flower beds when my dad started talking about work stuff. He mentioned that his company was going through some reorganization and that management was making a lot of changes that didn't make sense to him. It seemed like a good opening to bring up my own work situation. I told him that I had been thinking about our conversation at dinner the previous week and that I wanted to show him something. I pulled out the promotion letter and handed it to him. The letter was pretty detailed. It outlined my new responsibilities, the salary increase, and the reasons why I was being promoted. My dad read through it, but his reaction wasn't what I had hoped for. He said that corporate letters like this are just standard templates that HR departments use for everyone. He claimed that the language was probably copied from dozens of other promotion letters and that it didn't really prove anything about my individual performance. I tried to explain that the letter was personalized and mentioned specific projects I had worked on, but he brushed that off too. He said that managers just fill in the blanks on these templates and that it was all part of the corporate game. He suggested that I was being naive if I thought this letter represented a genuine evaluation of my abilities. That's when I realized that showing him documentation wasn't going to be enough. He was determined to dismiss anything I presented, no matter how official or detailed it was. I could have shown him a signed statement from the CEO, and he probably would have found a way to minimize it. I finished helping him with the yard work, but I was pretty frustrated by the time I left. It was becoming clear that this wasn't really about evidence or proof. It was about his unwillingness to acknowledge my success. I started thinking that maybe I needed to approach this differently, perhaps in front of other family members who might be more objective about the situation. The next family dinner was a couple of weeks later, and I decided it was time to address this head-on. I had asked Linda if she could print out some of the performance charts she had shown me, and she was happy to help. I brought the documents with me, along with the promotion letter, figuring that having everything laid out in front of the whole family might make it harder for my dad to dismiss. Dinner started normally, with everyone catching up on their week. My mom asked how the new position was going, which gave me the perfect opening. I said it was going well and that I had learned some interesting things about how the promotion decision was made. I pulled out the performance charts and spread them on the table. I explained that I had asked HR to show me the data behind my promotion because I wanted to understand how these decisions were made. I walked everyone through the numbers, the client satisfaction scores, the project completion rates, the revenue generation figures. My mom and Emma were genuinely interested in seeing the data. They asked questions about what the different metrics meant and seemed impressed by the results. Even Mike, who usually stays out of family discussions, said the numbers looked really strong. But my dad's reaction was predictable. He said that companies can manipulate statistics to show whatever they want, and that HR departments are experts at making average performance look exceptional. He claimed that these kinds of reports are just corporate propaganda designed to make employees feel good about themselves. I had anticipated this response, so I was ready with more specific information. I explained that the data included direct feedback from clients who had no reason to inflate their evaluations. I pointed out that the comparison with other employees was based on objective measures like revenue and project timelines, not subjective opinions. My sister jumped in and said she thought the evidence was pretty convincing. She pointed out that if companies were just handing out promotions randomly, they wouldn't bother collecting all this detailed performance data. My mom agreed and said she was proud of how thoroughly I had researched the situation. But my dad doubled down on his skepticism. He said that I was being manipulated by corporate systems designed to keep employees happy, and that real success couldn't be measured by charts and graphs. The conversation was getting tense, and I could see that my mom was getting uncomfortable with the direction it was heading. After dinner, I helped clean up while everyone else moved to the living room. My dad stayed in the kitchen with me, and I thought maybe we could have a more productive conversation one-on-one. I was hoping that without an audience, he might be more willing to acknowledge the validity of the performance data. Instead, he told me that he was disappointed in how I had handled the situation. He said that bringing work documents to family dinner was inappropriate and that I was being arrogant by trying to prove him wrong in front of everyone. He suggested that I was becoming too caught up in corporate culture and losing sight of what really mattered. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to be arrogant. I was just trying to show him that my promotion was based on legitimate performance, not politics or favoritism. I said that his initial comments had made me doubt myself, and that I had researched the situation to understand the truth. But he wasn't interested in hearing my perspective. He said that the fact that I felt the need to justify my promotion with charts and graphs just proved that, deep down, I knew it wasn't really deserved. He claimed that people who truly earn their success don't need to wave around documentation to prove it. That comment really got to me because it was such a twisted interpretation of what I was trying to do. I wasn't seeking validation. I was responding to his accusations by providing evidence. But somehow he had turned my research into proof that he was right all along. I realized that this conversation was going nowhere. No amount of evidence was going to change his mind because he had already decided that my success wasn't legitimate. He seemed invested in believing that I hadn't earned my promotion, regardless of what the data showed. I finished helping with the dishes and left shortly after. On the drive home, I kept thinking about his accusation that I was being arrogant. Was it arrogant to defend my achievements with facts? Was it wrong to push back when someone dismissed my success without any evidence? I didn't think so, but his words still stung. I remembered what Derek had said about some parents having difficulty accepting their children's success. Maybe that's what was happening here. Maybe my dad's refusal to acknowledge my achievements was more about his own issues than about my actual performance. A few weeks later, our company held its annual client appreciation event. It's usually a pretty big deal, with clients, employees, and their families all invited to a nice dinner and award ceremony. I had mentioned the event to my parents, and my mom had expressed interest in attending. I was surprised when my dad said he wanted to come too, given his attitude toward my work. The event was held at a nice hotel downtown, and there were probably about 200 people there. My parents seemed a little overwhelmed by the whole thing. It was definitely fancier than what they were used to. I introduced them to some of my coworkers and tried to help them feel comfortable. During the cocktail hour, Linda from HR came over to say hello. I introduced her to my parents and mentioned that she was the one who had helped me understand the promotion process. My mom immediately started asking her questions about the company and how long she had been there. Then my dad asked Linda directly whether promotions at our company were based on actual performance or just corporate politics. I was mortified that he would ask such a blunt question, but Linda handled it professionally. She explained that all promotions require extensive documentation and approval from multiple levels of management. Linda went on to say that my promotion in particular had been one of the strongest cases she had seen in terms of supporting data. She mentioned that my performance metrics were significantly above average and that client feedback had been consistently excellent. She said that the promotion was well-deserved and that the company was lucky to have employees like me. My dad listened to everything she said, but I could tell he was still skeptical. After Linda walked away, he muttered something about HR people being trained to say positive things about employees. But my mom looked impressed, and I could see that Linda's comments had made an impact on her. Later in the evening, during the awards ceremony, several employees were recognized for outstanding performance. When they announced the recent promotions, my name was mentioned along with several others. The presenter specifically noted that the promoted employees had demonstrated exceptional results and leadership potential. I glanced over at my parents during the announcement. My mom was beaming with pride, but my dad's expression was neutral. Even with all the evidence, the performance data, the HR confirmation, the public recognition, he still seemed unwilling to fully accept that I had earned my success. Epilogue. It's been about 6 months since all of this happened, and I've learned to accept that my dad may never acknowledge my professional achievements the way I'd like him to. The promotion has been going really well. I'm managing larger accounts now and have even been asked to mentor some of the newer employees. My performance reviews continue to be strong, and I'm feeling more confident in my abilities than ever before. I still see my family regularly, but I've stopped seeking my dad's approval for my career decisions. When good things happen at work, I share them with people who can appreciate them rather than trying to convince someone who's determined to be skeptical. My mom and sister are always supportive, and that means a lot to me. The whole experience taught me the importance of having concrete evidence to back up my achievements, but also that some people will dismiss evidence no matter how compelling it is. I'm grateful that I work for a company that uses objective metrics to evaluate performance, because it gives me confidence that my success is legitimate regardless of what anyone else thinks. Looking back, I think my dad's reaction said more about him than it did about me or my promotion. I've stopped taking his negativity personally and started focusing on the validation that comes from doing good work and getting recognition from people who understand my industry. That's been much more fulfilling than trying to change his mind ever was.